the seat I never saved. The resort trip was booked. My graduation was just a footnote. They chose the sand over my success. So I invited the strangers who actually stayed. My name is Luna. I was 22 when this happened. And for most of my life, I was the easy child. In the dictionary of my parents' minds, easy was synonymous with invisible. It meant I was the one who didn't cry when the dinner portion was too small, the one who didn't scream when my sister, Serena, broke my favorite toys, and the one who didn't demand new clothes every season. My parents, Robert and Martha, wore my independence like a badge of honor, but it wasn't a gift they gave me. It was a wall I had to build to survive their indifference. Growing up in our house was like living in a theater where the spotlight was permanently fixed on center stage, and I was just the stagehand moving furniture in the dark. Serena was the star. She was 2 years older, loud, demanding, and perpetually in a state of crisis. If she got a paper cut, it was a family emergency. If she had a bad day at work, my parents would drop everything to take her out for a comforting dinner. Meanwhile, I could have been winning a Nobel Prize in the backyard, and my mother would have only asked if I'd seen Serena's missing earring. Our house looked perfect from the outside. Classic suburban dream with a manicured lawn and a wreath on the door for every holiday. But inside, there was a silent, suffocating hierarchy. Everyone understood the rules without a word being spoken. Serena was the sun, and we were all expected to burn in her orbit. When I got into my university, one of the most prestigious programs in the country, the excitement in the room lasted exactly as long as it took for Serena to sigh and complain about her boss. My mother's eyes, which had briefly flickered toward me, immediately darted back to my sister. "That's nice, Luna. Now, Serena, tell us more about what that horrible man said to you at the office." I learned early on that my voice was a frequency my parents simply weren't tuned to. I paid my own way through every single semester. I worked 3 jobs. I was a library assistant in the mornings, a waitress in the evenings, and a freelance scriptwriter late at night when the rest of the world was asleep. I remember one winter when my car's heater broke. It was 10 degrees outside, and I was shivering so hard I could barely drive to my 8 a.m. class. When I tentatively asked my father if he could help with the repair cost, he didn't even look up from his newspaper. "You're so resourceful, Luna. You'll figure it out. Besides, we just helped Serena with her down payment on that new SUV. Money is tight." I didn't ask again. I bought a heavy blanket, wrapped it around my legs while I drove, and kept moving. That was the theme of my life. Figure it out, keep moving, don't make a scene. As my senior year of college drew to a close, the weight of 4 years of exhaustion began to settle in my bones. I had done it. I was graduating at the top of my class. I had secured a career-defining contract with a major production house. I had survived on caffeine and sheer willpower, and through it all, a small, pathetic part of me, the little girl who still wanted her. Dad, to tuck her in, hoped that graduation would be the moment they finally saw me. I thought, surely they can't ignore this. This is the finish line. I called them on a Tuesday. I remember the date because it was the day I received my honors cords in the mail. I was holding the gold fabric in my hand, feeling the texture, thinking about the thousands of hours of study it represented. "Mom," I said when she picked up, "I wanted to give you the final dates for the graduation ceremony. It's on the 15th. The ceremony starts at 10 a.m., but guests need to be there by 9 o'clock to get the reserved seats." There was a silence on the other end, not a shocked silence, but a distracted one. I could hear the sound of a suitcase zipper in the background. "Oh, Luna," she said, her voice sounding like she was talking to a telemarketer. "We were actually just talking about that. You see, Serena has had such a stressful quarter at work. She's been so burnt out, and your father and I decided she really needs a break. We've already booked a week-long trip to an all-inclusive resort in Cancun. We leave on the 12th. The gold cords felt heavy in my hand, like lead. "The 12th? I repeated. "But my graduation is the 15th. "We know, honey," my father's voice chimed in from the background. He must have been on speakerphone, but this was the only window that worked for Serena's schedule. "And honestly, Luna, you're so independent. You've handled everything else on your own. You're so good at it. A ceremony is just a formality, right? You'll walk across the stage, get a piece of paper, and then you'll be off to your big fancy job. You don't need us there to hold your hand." "It's not about holding my hand," I whispered. But they were already talking over me. Serena had walked into the room on their end, complaining about which swimsuit to pack, and just like that, I was gone. The call ended with a, "We'll FaceTime you from the beach," and a click that echoed in my soul. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I just sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my graduation gown. It was a deep midnight blue. It looked like a shroud. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it evaporated. The hope, the longing, the endless maybe next time excuses I made for them, They all vanished. The clarity was blinding. They weren't missing my graduation because they were busy. They were missing it because I wasn't a priority. I was an afterthought. I realized then that if I continued to save a seat for people who never intended to sit in it, I would be spending the rest of my life looking at an empty chair. So I decided to fill the chairs with people who actually loved me. A few days later, I was at the home of the Gables, Mr. and Mrs. Gable, were my neighbors from 3 blocks away. They were in their late 70s, and for the past 4 years, they had been more of a family to me than my own blood. When my car broke down, Mr. Gable was the one who showed up with a toolbox and a thermos of coffee. When I had the flu and couldn't leave my apartment, Mrs. Gable left containers of homemade soup on my doorstep. They didn't do it because they had to. They did it because they cared. I sat at their kitchen table, the smell of cinnamon and old books surrounding me. I told them about the resort. I told them my parents weren't coming. Mrs. Gable stopped mid-stitch on the quilt she was working on. She looked at Mr. Gable, then back at me. Her eyes weren't filled with the pity I expected, but with a fierce, protective anger. "That is not how this works, Luna," she said firmly. "A milestone like this, you don't go through that alone." "I was wondering," I started, my voice trembling slightly. "The school gives me 4 VIP guest passes for the front row. If you aren't busy, I'd love for you to be there." Mr. Gable reached out and patted my hand with his rough, wrinkled palm. "Busy? Luna, I'd cancel a meeting with the president to see you graduate. We'll be there. Front and center." I also called Maya, my best friend since freshman year. Maya had seen me at my worst. She had seen me crying over my laptop at 3 a.m. when I thought I couldn't finish a script. Her parents had welcomed me into their home every Thanksgiving when my own parents were too focused on Serena's holiday needs to remember to invite me back. I gave the remaining 2 tickets to Maya's parents. I didn't tell my family. I didn't send a spiteful text. I didn't warn them. I let them believe that I would be sitting there alone, independent and strong, while they sipped margaritas in Cancun. The morning of graduation, the sun was bright and unforgiving. I got dressed in silence. I pinned my hair back, put on the gold honors cords, and adjusted my cap. In the mirror, I didn't see the easy child. I saw a survivor. I saw a woman who had built a life out of scraps and turned it into gold. When I arrived at the auditorium, the atmosphere was electric. Families were everywhere, fathers carrying bouquets, mothers fussing over their sons' ties, siblings laughing and taking selfies. In the past, this sight would have made me ache. Today, it just felt like background noise. I walked toward the front row, the section reserved for the families of highest distinction, and there they were. Mr. Gable was wearing a suit that looked 30 years old but was pressed to perfection. Mrs. Gable had a corsage on her wrist. Maya's parents were waving wildly, holding a giant sign that said, "That's our girl!" My heart felt full, not the fragile, empty fullness I felt when my parents gave me a half-hearted compliment, but a solid, heavy warmth. These people chose to be here. They weren't obligated by DNA. They were bound by choice. The ceremony began. The music swelled, the speeches started, and the names began to roll. But there was a secret I hadn't even told the Gables. My production job wasn't just a job. The script I had written in the dead of night, while my parents were ignoring my existence, had won a national competition. The university had kept it under wraps for a special presentation. The dean of the College of Arts and Sciences stood at the podium. "Before we proceed to the conferring of degrees, we have a special announcement. This year, one of our graduates has achieved something unprecedented. Not only is she graduating with the highest honors, but her original screenplay has been selected as the flagship project for a major studio's next season. This isn't just an academic success. It is a professional triumph." The room went silent. I could feel the eyes of thousands of people on me. "Would Luna please come to the stage?" I stood up. My legs felt like jelly, but my heart was a drum. As I walked up the steps, I glanced at the giant screens on either side of the stage. The ceremony was being live-streamed. I knew my parents had the link. I knew they were probably sitting in their air-conditioned suite, halfway through a bottle of wine, thinking they were watching a formality. The dean handed me a trophy and a plaque, but he didn't let me go. "Luna has requested that the Guardian of Success Award, a prestigious honor given to the family that provided the foundation for such excellence, be presented today. This award comes with a $25,000 donation to the charity of the family's choice and a lifetime achievement recognition." The dean looked toward the front row. Would Luna's family please join her on stage? This was the moment. The camera panned to the reserved for family seats. If my parents had been there, they would have stood up, preening, ready to take credit for the daughter they never supported. They would have smiled for the cameras and told everyone how they always knew I was special. But they weren't there. Instead, the world saw Mr. and Mrs. Gable, They saw two elderly neighbors, looking stunned and humbled, slowly making their way up the stairs. They saw Maya's parents crying openly, joining them. I stepped to the microphone. The auditorium was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. "Success is never a solo journey," I said, my voice echoing through the speakers. But family isn't always defined by the names on a birth certificate. Family is defined by who shows up when the lights are off. It's defined by who helps you fix your car in the freezing cold, who brings you soup when you're too tired to stand, and who chooses to be in the front row when they could be anywhere else in the world. I looked directly into the camera lens. I knew my mother was looking at that same image on her tablet. I knew my father was seeing the Gables, people he didn't even know the names of, standing in the spot that was supposed to be his. "I'm here today because these 4 people decided that I mattered," I continued. "They didn't need me to be easy. They didn't need me to be invisible. They just needed me to be me. To the Gables and the Millers, thank you for being my home when I had none." And the applause was deafening. It wasn't just a polite clap. It was a roar. People were standing, cheering, some even wiping tears away. I hugged Mrs. Gable and she whispered, "We're so proud of you, daughter," into my ear. That word, daughter, hit me harder than any diploma ever could. The rest of the ceremony was a blur of joy. We took photos, we laughed, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. But then the messages started. As soon as I got to the restaurant for our celebratory lunch, I turned on my phone. It vibrated so hard it nearly jumped out of my hand. 78 missed calls, 156 unread texts. I opened the first one from my mother. "Luna, what was that? Who are those people on stage? We are watching the stream and we are humiliated. Everyone back home is texting us, asking why we aren't there. You made us look like monsters." My father's text was worse. "I can't believe you'd give a $25,000 award to the neighbors. Do you have any idea what that money could have done for your sister's business? You are incredibly selfish. We are your parents. We deserve that recognition, not some strangers." Then came Serena. "Wow, Luna, way to ruin our vacation. Mom and Dad have been crying in the hotel room for 3 hours because of your little stunt. You always have to be the center of attention, don't you? You couldn't just let us have this one trip." I sat there looking at the screen. In the past, these messages would have sent me into a spiral of guilt. I would have called them, apologized, and tried to make it up to them. I would have felt like the bad daughter. But as I looked around the table at the Gables and the Millers, who were currently arguing over who got to pay for the appetizers, even though I told them it was on me, I felt nothing, no guilt, no shame, just a cold, hard sense of justice. I typed one reply to the family group chat. "You said I didn't need you to hold my hand." "You were right. I didn't, but the Gables did. They didn't come for the award or the money. They didn't even know about it. They came for me. You stayed for yourselves. Don't worry about looking like monsters. You're just looking at the reflection of the choices you made. Enjoy Cancun. I'm busy starting my life with my family." I blocked the numbers, all 3 of them. The fallout was intense for a few weeks. My parents tried to call me from different phones. They sent my Aunt Sarah to reason with me. They even tried to post a public statement on Facebook about how they were heartbroken by their daughter's sudden estrangement. But the internet is a funny place. The clip of my graduation speech had gone viral. People had already done the math. They saw the reserved signs. They saw the Gables. They saw the genuine love on that stage. When my sister tried to post a photo of them at the resort to prove they were just trying to relax, the comments were ruthless. "You chose a margarita over your sister's honors graduation? Yikes. Imagine being so strong and independent that your parents think you don't need love. Good for her for finding real family." Eventually the noise died down. My parents stopped calling when they realized there was no more prestige to be gained from me and no way to get their hands on my career success. They went back to focusing on Serena, and Serena went back to having crises that required their full attention. I moved into a new apartment in the city, closer to my studio. I didn't give them the address. Every Sunday I still go to the Gables house. I help Mr. Gable in the garden, and I sit with Mrs. Gable while she quilts. They have a framed photo of us on the graduation stage sitting right on their mantle, next to pictures of their own children. I learned a very expensive lesson that day, and it didn't cost me a dime of tuition. It cost me a relationship with the people who shared my blood, but it bought me a life with the people who shared my soul. If you are the easy child, if you are the one who is always expected to understand, to step aside, to be strong, hear me. Your independence is not a reason for them to neglect you. Your strength is not a reason for them to leave you alone in the dark. You don't owe your presence to people who only value you when the cameras are on. You don't have to save a seat for someone who is already halfway to the beach. The door to my past is closed, and for the first time, I'm not standing behind it, waiting for someone to knock. I'm outside in the sun, walking with the people who stayed. If this story reminded you of your own strength, share your story in the comments. Let's remind each other that we are worth showing up for. And don't forget to hit subscribe to Fire Off. Revenge for more stories of justice and self-discovery.